Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Okay, there we go. Tonight's episode is, I would say, dash poetic, philosophical, and a tad bit scientific. An idea arose to me that I felt it's worth talking about. It's worth talking about even if it may sound bizarre, even if it may sound unnecessary by various groups and ideological systems. I felt somebody has to say. The question came that we have, where is the universe? That was the title, but then I changed it to light is the brain of the observable universe. I'll get to that. But where is the universe? And I wrote a quote. This literally, the idea for this episode came yesterday. I wrote, we need a universe to define the laws in the universe, right? And we use the laws of nature to define the universe. So there is a paradoxical thing going on where we first need to consider a universe, then try to see what the laws are in that universe. But we need the laws of nature to be the container of the universe. That means it's as if when we think about, let's say even the Big Bang, that means there was nothing, but there was the force for there to come something, for something to arise. And it's not that there was nothing. At the Big Bang, it is considered that space was expanding, and then in less than a second, the universe went to billions of kilometers in size. You know, in less than a second. They call that inflation. Cosmic inflation. And so it was as if like from the earliest particles, as the universe began becoming cooling down, then hydrogen atoms formed, and eventually things got more apparent. Currently in 2020, I cannot ignore this, that when somebody asks where is the universe, or where is the center of the universe, or where is the edge of the universe, there are no answers for these. That means we are considering, they call this the cosmological principle. Where we see it as isotropic and homogeneous. Let me see if I can find something for you here to show this. There we go. So I'm going to read this for you. Okay, there we go. The cosmological principle, a fundamental principle and assumption of cosmology, which says that on a large scale, the universe is both homogeneous and isotropic. And an example, and okay, so let me first say, what does homogeneous and isotropic mean? Isotropic, the universe looks approximately the same in all directions. And homogeneous is when one large region of the universe is approximately the same as any other large region of the universe. Now, even though it says it's homogeneous and isotropic, evidently these two, and of course, please excuse me, I've walked more towards philosophy than scientific analysis, so I will try my best to stay true to the science that I'm aware of. But so anyways, but the philosopher in me, of course, has its roar is louder. So that means, you know what that means? The isotropic nature of the universe or its homogeneity, you know. Let's look at the homogeneity first. You know what it is like? It's like saying that you go on the beach and you see a little bit of sand, and if you look at a little bit of sand, in that little bit of chunk of sand, maybe there's some unique rocks, and then in another little bit of chunk of sand, maybe there isn't. Right? But if you see it on a large enough, that means on average, if we were to make the beach into chunks, into giant chunks rather than small bits, we would say you would find about the same amount of rocks in that giant chunk to that giant chunk rather than smaller chunks, right? So as if you got a bit of sand with your hand, you know, scooped it up, or if you had a bulldozer and you scooped up a giant chunk of sand, like the content that you would find in it. Now, this thing about how the universe, and of course here it says that the cosmological principle, it's a fundamental principle and assumption. That means it's like the assumption is coming by holding a certain view in a certain way. And I will tell you, all of human efforts of knowledge, what are they? They are in some sense how far the eyes open, and where the lines of what is real and unreal is drawn. You know, that means it's as if like the reason we are entertaining, for example, the Big Bang Theory, it's thanks to Hubble. Hubble came and noticed that the galaxies were moving away from us and that there was background radiation. And really what the whole debate is, this is something I forgot to mention, that from the point of the ancient Greeks, starting from the ancient Greeks, they were pretty much wondering, is this universe finite or is it infinite? And it seems that after the ancient Greeks' evolution, and of course as the fathers of science began awakening in this realm, Isaac Newton considered it was infinite, the universe. Einstein considered it finite until Hubble came, and Hubble changed Einstein's view, making Einstein feel he had made a mistake. You know, his biggest blunder being the cosmological constant. You know, that means it's like certain things are the same. So anyways, of course I have the philosophical inclination towards this, so let me tell you why there is a value here, why there is even a question to be asked. Okay, first we got to consider what is asking the question and where is the question asking, and this question of whether the universe is finite and infinite is us getting to there. Right, from the most, you can say, simplest view of like, first, what were we trying to figure out? We were just trying to figure out as creatures on this earth, just to survive, just to get to the next day, just to find some food or some clean water or a shelter or find the right temperature to exist in, you know. So these were the basic things that we were wondering about. So it's as if like eyes appeared, and when I say the brain, excuse me, light is the brain of the observable universe, I mean just take it in. And it took a while for light to come in, by the way. Excuse me. So I thought of it in the way, to be honest, through a secular pattern of thought, that it's like, what is the human being? It's, in some sense, it is a brain. And so, you know, there are those in the world who they like the flying spaghetti monster than actual spaghetti. So what I mean is, like, in some sense, we are brains, and after the brain emerged, then psychology's potential of us being a human to ourselves emerged, right? So we needed a brain before we could be a person. And poetically, when I say light is the brain of the observable universe, we needed light for the universe to be able to notice itself. That means the role light is playing in the universe is the same as the role as the brain is playing for a person. That means you need light to see a universe, you need a brain to be a person. And this notion of even there being an unobservable universe, that means it's like some things we see, but the rest of the room is dark, right? And all our assumptions, all our theories, all of human knowledge, and all the methods of approach to just knowing, they have all been focused with the relationship with the unobservable universe. It doesn't matter if the person, what kind of ideological system it had. It's honestly the greater relationship with the unknown. That means it's as if whether we're trying to see, it's like, how would I say it? It's as if astrophysicists conducted an analysis of certain events taking place in the universe, and there being the interruption of forces that cannot be explained. That means really for me, of course, it is not the case. For a physicist, their explanation would be way more heavier, but for me, the way I see it, it's that it was too dark to see. That means there are forces perhaps intervening with how the human experience or the universal activity is taking place that are unobservable, kind of like you don't see the roots of the tree, but you know it is there. And it's as if like the scientific analysis of the observable universe takes us to a point where the trunk is going into the soil and we don't see the roots, right? But we know there should be something there. How is it kept invisible, right? So pretty much the world is vast, and even though we say it has no center and it has no edge due to its isotropic nature and homogeneous nature, that means the cosmological principle is another way of saying you are in the middle of nowhere. But it's way more beautiful. It's a way more beautiful explanation of in the middle of nowhere. Because if we don't have a center and if there is no edge, there is no, what description are we giving? Are we trying to localize a dream that never was anywhere, right? So when it comes to mathematical language and the challenges that mathematics has in trying to accurately pinpoint it, you know what it is? It's like mathematics is a language between the inner realm and outer realm. It is abstract, yet in its abstraction, it accurately explains that which is not abstract. So it's as if like a mathematician sitting at a table trying to explain the value of a certain system or a certain equation. It's as if that mathematician is using the arbitrary force of laws and principles kept from before to now see something new and see how it fits through the sieve of how the memory held some ideas. I am telling you, this notion of where is the universe, it is philosophically fascinating because it nullifies the universal position. And that means if human beings, really, if right now we didn't know, like it could be our greatest fallacy, the great human error, that we even saw a measurable universe. Do you know? Something I think that those whose eyes are open in mathematics and science can never believe. That means they have to have and hold a blind eye to, right? Because then what is the value of the work? If in the causal position it is immaterial, materiality is the hallucination of the unknown. If causally it is material, immateriality is the hallucination of the known. That means either the unknown is a hallucination. That means either, let's say the context is unknown, the concept is known. This is currently how we're saying it. We're saying we know who we are, you know, look at our sciences, technologies, philosophies, ideologies, right? So we are like the known concept in an unknown context, right? But now we've reached a point through, I would say, language worship, where the known, where it's as if it's like we're the small and the big, and because we know something in a small way, we feel we know 100% the big. And that is the error. The biggest error in a changing universe is assumption. Because that assumption, if it doesn't update, you become an ass. So, we are either fathoming, if the universe is finite, it's a container. Imagine there's like a glass cup. That's what the universe would mean if it's finite. If it is infinite, it means it cannot be contained. Because it cannot be contained, it cannot be measured. That means you cannot, even, let's say you something that surpasses the tool of measurement. What can we do? We can't measure it, you know. Imagine an alien landed on Earth, and this alien became really good friends with humanity. And so we asked this alien, let's say you were an astrophysicist and you were friends with an alien, and you're like, hey, when you see human beings, I've never asked you this. Let's say you're asking your alien friend in the future, and you're an astrophysicist, you ask your alien friend and you're like, how do you see humans? And then the alien friend is like, no way, I never thought you'd ask. Yeah, there's multiple dimensions. That means all your sciences, all your mathematics, all your laws, they are due to the limitation of not how human beings can see the unobservable, it's how they have held the observable. Pretty much we found something and we held on to it, and we didn't realize that the nature of what is using knowledge to figure out what the unknown is at its core unknown. So that extraterrestrial would look at the astrophysicist and say, your equations are very accurate, but there are curtains surrounding the way you're interpreting the laws of reality. And that was one thing the mystic had, an honesty. Right? When you look at the secular and the non-secular, it's both claiming something. It's only the mystic who was like, yeah, I am the unknown. You know, it's so this is the difference. This is like the religious lens is saying, God knows. The non-religious lens, the secular lens, is saying, I know. And the yogi, the mystic, I would say, the mystic is saying, I am the unknown. The I am is an unknown phenomenological display of a universal event, part of a universal event. So, again, this takes us back to the container of the universe, how the universe is contained. So, if somebody says, how do you know what the universe is? And we're saying we observed the behavior of the observable. So it's as if we define a universe as the laws of nature, which at their true essence are unknown to us, because human understanding is a tiny fragment where it's like if human understanding is like your red blood cells. Imagine making their own language. Imagine the red blood cells in your vein becoming conscious, making their own language, making their beliefs and theories and all their ideologies on why the human body is moving. So imagine your red blood cells, they made their own language and technologies, and they wanted to explain why you go to work, why your body works, you know? And you would see that they can feel like kings, but they are in the small. So I'm saying that we can never explain something that we cannot totally see. So this is why it can endlessly update. This is why any sort of format of truth can update, just like the language does. That means if we were to ask ourselves if human beings had never learned to speak, there would be no knowledge. There wouldn't be communicatable knowledge. There would be knowing. Maybe we'd be a silent species, right? Just experientially moving around, and maybe body language was a sort of communication. And of course, body language is the first language, one of the early languages, right? That means it's like the reason why I sometimes fathom why there's even shyness in society is because the body's language, the body doesn't speak the same language as the environment. You know, that means a person's body language is totally different. A person in their inner realms, they can be completely calm and comfortable, but in the outer realms, their body may feel like their body is responding to something else, you know? You know, or a person may appear like they're unshakable, but then suddenly in their inner realms, of course, there's a fear dragging them down, you know, like there could be many ways. So if we need a universe to explain the laws of nature, we're saying the laws of the universe, the laws of nature are in a universe, right? So we need a universe to explain the laws, and we need the laws to explain the universe. And until science can, and I'm not saying science, I mean science is the leader, that's why I'm saying, because science is a method ultimately, and there's so many different types of human beings, just like, for example, in religion, it's like ink on a page, and every person, based on the way they've lived, based on the way they've been introduced to life, or reads the content. It's the same thing, that it doesn't matter if you're reading a book or if you're applying a method, right? Does it matter? Does it matter? Ultimately, it is left to the person reading, or it's left to the person using, right? I've written here, are the planets the illusion of the laws of nature, in brackets forces, and how can the laws of the universe be, oh my god, I can't read my own handwriting, be contained inside? That means how can the laws of the universe be contained inside the universe that requires laws to have a definition? This is the biggest challenge of scientific inquiry, one of the biggest challenges of scientific inquiry. The other biggest challenge of scientific inquiry is all scientists in the world have to gather, and they have to think of the problem of the social simulation upon a real world. Because human beings have an emotional dimension, we cannot just build a rational world. And this is why it cannot become a world of robots. Our emotions make us have whatever sort of analysis of a system. So let's say you go in a room and you want to order pizza. There's 7 people in the room. So you're about to order you're about to order pizza for 7 people, and then somebody says, yo, you know, more people are coming, you know. So suddenly it's like the person had an analysis. They were like 7 people, we're gonna get like I don't know, 2 pizzas or something. You know? So okay, let's say 8 people. 8 people, we get 2 pizzas. Okay? Now, if 4 more people come, the order has to change, literally. So that's what I'm saying. a person could have whatever analysis. You can find the most accurate ideological system representing the outer realms. It's just that the human mind is not just here to be certain of form. That means it's as if you see a beautiful work of art, you're like, for a moment, you'll be like, nice. Then you go and live into the unknown variables of your own life. The unknown variables in life pull us, really. That's really what's inspiring me to give these talks, you know? That means I could say up till 2011, I had no care. I didn't even care for the universe I was in. Not that I didn't care to understand it. Because there was so many activities. It's as if our eyes open in a society where it's like, let's say we're in a container of energy, and this we're like a battery. And this power of this battery can go only to a limited range of things. And there's so many types of games. And when I say games, anything that occupies the attention and the person feels like they're part of something. For example, for me, surviving every day, that's literally like a game. Literally like playing FIFA. You know, it's like the character... There's a sort of self-victory to be attained by one's own existential continuity. But I'm just saying that when we see even the positioning of the mind, so you could find any accurate empirical result to an experiment and bring it into a society where people don't go based on rationality only. So that's another great challenge. That's one of the, I was trying to say the second challenge for the scientific community, right? To try to see how can we weave like, because when you strip away the imagination, you strip away the ability for new imagery to change the previous meaning. That means the idea of a self can totally be an illusion if you feel you're changing. But if you feel you're changeless due to our memory, usually our biological memory, we remain as an individual. That means it's just brilliant how we are an energetic expression and an experiential controller of this energetic expression. And after we express the energy, whether it's in the format of a test, an experiment, or whether the energy is just something that there is no testable ground, that means there is no common thing. That means here's the chaos of language, that we had to imagine reality. The word reality, R-E-A-L, not only the letters had to be imagined out of nowhere, you know, just like colors being declared with names. Suddenly, you know, that color becomes blue, that becomes red. Suddenly we have the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C. What does the letter A mean? It's just a letter. You know, it has no meaning. But when a bunch of letters come together, suddenly there is meaning. You know, and so it's the recognition that if the letters came out of thin air, if conception also had a big bang in our minds, I think the healthiest view for human beings on this planet it's not ideological occupation of position. There is no point of becoming allies with language, with a certain type of language. The healthiest view to have is, for the first time, we're going to stop seeing a world of teachers and students where there's teachings and there's things to learn. Okay, we're gonna stop seeing that, and we're gonna see that the human species is on a battlefield. It is on a galactic, stranded on a galactic island where every person, every living conscious breath, I don't care if the person is good or bad, there is utility in the value of you being a human being. Now, if you care for the advanced civilization, you will understand for the longest time, language has overpowered us. What that means is, rather than us being the gods that chained language language became the god that made us the chain titans. And so in our psychology, the limitation of our behavior is proportional to the limitation of our experiential knowing. So the biggest issue with language, and why I'm trying to say we have to as a species wake up we have to wake up from the linguistic simulation, is because it is owning our lives. It is living the unknown. It is measuring our unknown potential, and so energetically lives can be wasted. That means imagine Albert Einstein, and instead of him finding life, taking him to a point where he's working at a patent office, where he has a table. Honestly, it was a smart job choice. And so Albert Einstein had a table in the patent office, and he writes these 2 essays on general relativity and super relativity. Do you know? And imagine if instead, like, he had come from a lineage of carpenters, and his family was like, how dare you go write numbers on a piece of paper? You have to carve wood for the end of your life. Don't dishonor your ancestors. And imagine Albert Einstein was like, oh, you know, I gotta listen to my ancestors. They were here before me. They must know, you know, better than me. Do you know? And imagine the world had no Albert Einstein. It would be one of those things where scientists would be crying. Do you know? So it would be a situation where somehow we have to incorporate novelty. We have to we got to take the value system. That means we are telling ourselves a story that doesn't work. And that story is in language. And the species has to have the strength to come to a non-dual witnessing to restart, reignite the methods of knowledge. Right? I personally, if I could, I don't have the ability. I'm just some guy, you know, speaking in a microphone, you know. But if I had the ability, instantly I would reformat the educational systems on all over this planet, all of them, not a single one left out, to a mindset of exploration, engagement, and all of human knowledge is here to enhance the ability of the civilization. That means in the future, let's say their children will be born who their body language doesn't fit into the cultural program or something like that. And imagine the educational systems like, I don't know what to do with these kids, they don't fit into the classroom, you know? And so there would be a rage where if it was in the future a truly advanced civilization, the advanced civilization would be every person has a value. Whether people know it or whether they know it, or whether people don't know it or whether they don't know it. Everything has a value. It is just that where is it placed? In the same way that Albert Einstein said, you judge a fish by its ability to fly and it will go its whole life thinking it's stupid. That means, of course, you judge a fish, and it's like the same with the turtle and the hare. This old story where this turtle's like, yeah, like there's this rabbit showing off, how fast it can run, and this turtle's like, yo, I'm gonna do something, The turtle goes and they start a race, and long story short, the rabbit's taunting the turtle. The rabbit in the middle runs so fast he reaches the halfway point, and the turtle's just slowly walking. The turtle is in competition with himself. He's like, okay, whatever, even if I don't beat this rabbit, at least I'll beat my own past record. Something like that. And so the rabbit has this ego and this arrogance and is not in tune with with the rhythms of the decency of the karma of the moment. So the rabbit just sleeps in his arrogance, right? And he wakes up and he sees there is no turtle around, and he's like, yo, this turtle is so behind. Then he suddenly, as he's walking around, kind of like waking up from his nap, he notices there's foot marks. And not foot marks, like turtle limb marks. And the rabbit suddenly realizes the turtle has passed him. The rabbit runs really quickly, sees the turtle is about to cross the finish line, and the rabbit is in some sense, he comes second. Now at the beginning of the race, sure, but if it was the other way around, if it was a turtle underwater racing, like, and a rabbit was like in a swimming contest with a turtle, the same ignorance could apply. It's all about just if the attention compares to other or it compares to self. If the person compares to self, their motivation becomes independent of whatever happens in the outer realms. If they compare themselves to others, their motivation becomes dependent on whatever happens in the outer realms. You know, the challenge of philosophy is to find the right question. The challenge of science is to find the right answer. And so when we come to a point where we are like, okay, a creature emerged, okay, a brain emerged. After this brain emerged, there was identity and personality that emerged. That means right now, who I am is the creation of my brain. That means there has never been creative people. There have just been active brains. There's no such thing as creativity. It's like the brain is generating it all, right? And if the brain is not an independent, that means look at how hilarious it is. We are saying the brain is generating our identity, but we need our identity to define the brain, to use the word, to come up with the name brain. So it was as if like unknown circumstances made us become aware that we can know, and then the moment we became aware, like the individual self was known, that's where language was born. Because really all of language comes to who is speaking. And if it's not an individual, you cannot communicate. I am telling you, if the person, let's say you're someone who you saw like yogis meditate in a YouTube video and you were like, oh my God, that is where my soul needs to walk to. And let's say you sit down and you meditate and you become selfless. You actually become selfless. You experience a moment where the most important priority in your value system upon this life is not yourself. That's really the aim of a meditation, to make you realize you're being the world, and then you are doing things as a self, but simultaneously being the world. This is why once as Sri Swami Krishnananda says, he says, meditation, there's no longer a need for meditation when one has noticed the inseparability of the individual activity and the cosmic activity. So if you become selfless, that means you're not an individual. That means you don't have memory. You step out of your memories. This doesn't mean you forget due to the brain's activity. It just means that what was in the driver's seat is now a presence, not a personality. Because if we were to, even from a view of a psychologist, wonder what is motivating people to be people in a universe where we can't even see its edge or center, or we are finding pride in even saying it has no edge or center. That is the weirdest thing, right? All of society and inside the culture and on the surface of on this rock, everything is like there is a center and edge to things, into all different types of systems. But when it comes to the big system, it's like, yeah, you know, it's like forget about the longitude and latitude mirage. You know, even if we were to kind of fathom a giant spherical, like as if the whole universe. In my own poetry, I remember writing some poetic lines that were very odd to me. And they were in the sense of kind of like I had seen something where it's as if we're inside a giant sun. I was like, that's one thing that I hadn't, like my own intelligence hadn't fathomed. right? I had fathomed that I'm on Earth. I had fathomed that the Earth is spinning around the sun. I had fathomed, okay, what is the sun spinning around? There were theories that pointed to a giant black hole, but at the same time, if it's in an isotropic universe, it doesn't matter where we are. It's like wherever we are is the center, right? So it's like we're coming to this realization. It is true. Sorry guys, I think I'm speaking too fast. I'm not getting enough oxygen. Excuse me, to continue. We had this view in early times that the earth was flat, and that through the religious narrative's overpowerment and control over the language of the cultural program, the world was seen as, Earth was seen as the center of the universe. Then people like Copernicus, like Galileo, they came and they actually countered this view. In some sense, their curiosity of the world made them be ahead of their time. So they countered the current view of the culture that Earth, the Earth is the center. And we realized we're not the center of it, pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say. Now we are saying we're not the center of the universe, but we have gotten rid of the idea of the center. That means who thought? That means I think both Galileo and Copernicus, if they were alive right now, they'd just be like, what the fuck? Like they'd be so shocked that we have come to this conclusion that there is no center, an edge to it. So it's like we thought where our consciousness is starting from is not the center. Then we thought it was something else being the center of the universe. And now it has come to a point where we cannot even consider the center of the universe. That means it's like the blasphemy of modern times to think that after the cosmological principle was declared, that there can be a center. It's as if, look at these primitive peasants thinking there's a center and edge to the universe. My whole view is that if we accepted that there's a greater than sign towards the unknown is greater than the known. First of all language wars, all belief systems fighting with one another, it's literally the unknown is like, sit down kids, to stop disturbing the class, the cosmic classroom. So that means that it's like right now we're at the point where we have to somehow bypass the Hunger Game urge of ideological systems to clone their virtue in everything. Like we have to get past that. And I find the unknown being the greatest tool. That means that is the only force, that is the only backup I have found to my work. The great I would say the one thing that really I noticed everybody is trying to avoid because it is bizarre. That means we should think that it's not just things in the outer realm that are scary. You see a scary thing in the outer realms. It's that in the inner realms, just the idea that we are locally being non-local, that we are being a location, as if our consideration of a local reality is the mirage in the desert of the unknown. So, to not fear the unknown, and the whole teacher-students show, theatrical Shakespearean play is pushed aside and everybody becomes explorers. That means if the educational system becomes closer to what the Night's Watch was doing in Game of Thrones, where they were in some sense sending exhibitions over the wall of what they felt was they knew, or what they were certain about. That means people don't realize it. Language is a costume for the presence of energy and attention simultaneously. So guys, what I'm trying to say is that the picture of the world is changing. We thought the earth was flat. Now we're considering it spherical. If we consider that the earth is multidimensional, it could be that it's like a, how would I say it? It's like an oval disc. That could still create an thing, but I'm not saying these are just ideas I'm throwing out there. But so imagine a sphere and imagine a plane. Imagine a sphere on a table, rolling on a table. That point of the sphere that is touching the table that it's rolling, that will always feel flat. So for a nanosecond on a sphere rolling on a flat table, imagine, we would feel it's like there's a flat experience of the planet, and outside of our visuals of like somebody stepping out the door and feeling like they're on a field, on a plane. I'm saying it's as if it's like a bowling ball in a bowl about to hit the pins, and the moving bowling ball to the attention, considering that there is the what do you call it, the alley that the bowling's moving in. It could be both. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we want to use language as paint to cover our face with it and think that that is truth, I mean, we can. We have been coloring our consciousness with the paint of language since dawn, but I think when the species gets tired of splashing paint on its face, on its true face, then it's like a true renaissance movement of communication will happen, because communication is the chess move. That is the only thing. It doesn't matter if you are like a scientist, you know, in New York, or you are a shaman in the Amazons in a village nobody knows about. The unknown is in common. The known is not common. If we wanted to judge ourselves based on what we know, there would be endless reasons to war, and debates will never end. It is our conclusion on language, inside language, that will suggest the potential of the future generations. So I am saying that an object is contained in a story which is a subject, and how that story changes seems to be, or how that character in that subjective story seems to be, you know, the free willy whale kind of jumping out of the water. So I'm saying it's like an arbitrary, spontaneous, unknown movement is animating psychology. And I don't know what the species is going to do with this. I don't know how long. I have started to already live in accordance to the updates of my inner realms. That means I'm like, okay, why do I have a mind? Okay, you know what it is? It's like, this is the cool thing about the human mind. An object in the outer realms in front of your eyes, you have to walk to locations, but the mind is the only thing that locations can come to it. You could be in the middle of a bus and you know, standing in the middle of a bus and think you're in a space station, you know. I'm saying, like, the mind is multi-locality. Our mind is the multidimensional question mark in the room. So back to the universe. Where is the universe? You know, this is the important thing. You know, if we can't answer this, then everything is hallucination. This question is literally, you know, the main question. And of course, if the unknown is greater than the known, language explaining reality means we just accepted too soon an image for a film. What that means is that's really knowledge. Somebody says truth is this, somebody says truth is that. What are they saying? It's as if it's snapshots on a film that's endlessly changing and nobody knows how the film's going to end up. You know, what we know is that we have control over a certain range of universal activity. Valerie says, is there more than one universe? Yeah, it's a theory. Okay, we don't know. The universe is something we're naming. It's as if, like, think of naming your children. Now think of, like, you know, after some point we started naming it a universe. We started to, it literally the container pattern in the outer realms led to it, right? As if a person would wear a jacket and then you could wonder if the universe was wearing a jacket. It's like what contained, you know, the essence. In mystical traditions, this is the difference between the words esoteric and exoteric. And exoteric was the illusion and the facade in the outer realms. But the esoteric dimension had to do with the essence of the situation. This is why I'm saying esoteric communities in today's age, they're all being rooted to the unknown because they are staying true to the appearance of spirituality, but they are forgetting that its connection has to do with your essence. With your own eyes on your essence. So if you desire something, you're going to get slapped in the unknown too hard. Like if you desire it too hard, you're going to get slapped in the unknown, right? And I'm saying that in a humorous way. The worst thing that can happen in the unknown is that the person, let me just say it like this. The worst thing that can happen is the person forgetting that they are the room. The poet Rumi has one of the most incredible sentences ever written. He says, wherever you are, be the soul of that place. And that sentence, be the soul, it's our conscious effort upon the recognition of how we're being and then doing things that sets the world in motion. That means this is one of the most incredible, I would say, observations of the human being. That our decision puts us into a program of perception. That means the biggest question is, can we ever see the universe? Or are we just being it? That means is being more in the cause, is being first in the causal position, and then the effect of something being is how something is done, right? Or is something being done and that's how being is? You know, it's like that mystical idea in certain I would say mystical circles. They have this idea, they take it a bit far, but I'll share it. Okay, I'll create some context here. For example, in Shintoism, there is this view that all objects are vessels, and it's set in a panpsychist context. And so what the view is that all matter is a vessel for a highway of souls, and even it moves past traditional spirituality. It's like one soul, one body. It's surpassing that even. Right now, I wanted to say that in certain, closer to the Sufi idea, but I wouldn't declare it as Sufi. I would say just in certain mystical circles around that area, there was this idea of a philosophical dimension. Not that there's a highway of souls behind every moment of matter, every unit of matter, but that this dimension is being drawn. That means just like how I'm speaking and words are being created, and that as the words are being created, the sounds enter the listener's ears and image arises. It's like the view was like higher dimensional beings are painting this existence of ours. That means it's like interdimensional teamwork. You know? So it's as if like we're here like in Square Town as 2D creatures, for example, being like, yeah, this is truth, this is knowledge, this is the result of our findings, right? But at the same time, it's as if like 3 cubes, it's actually cubes that are being squares. And how long will it take to be a cube? And this is really true mysticism. This is why the mystic should be valued, should be honored, should be intellectually seen as a holy man. Why? Because they cared for the unknown. When all ideological systems are trying to make sense of what? A rock in the middle of nowhere? Everything is poetry, is it not? The world is more poetry than you can say prose, you know? So where does that leave us? That leaves us in fathoming reality in accordance to if we are the mover of it, the mover of its meaning, or as reality is the mover of our meaning. Right? Because you see, this is a big question. It's like the noble lie. The noble lie in, who was it? Plato? Plato's noble lie. Or like the honor among thieves, right? But no, that's a different context. I would say the noble lie. What it meant is, let's say you're in a country and some disaster is happening, some, let's say, military disaster is happening, and because this military disaster is happening, the parent doesn't know what to tell the children. And so the parent looks at the child and lies to the child because the child wouldn't know what to do with the immensity of the circumstance. Right? So it's as if it's noble in the sense where it loved, then analyzed to what to say. But if we ignore that life-sensitive dimension, right, our knowledge is going to make us machines, and when we become machines, that is the era of tormented souls. You know, and we can bypass that if we act intelligently. Because the concept of a tormented soul, I mean, trust me, like, and I usually try to keep the imagery, try to pilot the imagery, try to pilot the talk smoothly. But if I wanted to say about some insights I've seen in chaos, just the concept, not evil. You can say evil is a type of, is chaotic to a sort of ordered system, but it needs order to break first, then to be branded as evil. That means Joker needed Batman to be Joker. And when Batman wasn't being, like, if Batman stopped showing up, Joker would probably like break down. Do you know why? Because the psychology becomes fragile into being dependent on, and it's really, honestly, like a sad thing, but there's nothing sad about it when you realize how incredibly advanced we are, how incredibly advanced communicators we are. We have just been, we've just put on a suit of linguistic identity, not realizing that we are way more than the language suggests. But I will make a pointer here. So the idea of the tormented soul is resistance by nature. What does that mean? It means every person's intelligence is on an expression basis. That means it's not just important how people behave to others and to society or in society, but it's also important for people how they are performing to themselves. Right? It's kind of like that moment when somebody's trying to say something and the person is interrupted and the person's like, now I gotta begin again. Why? Why does that person want to begin again? Because they want the way they perform to have an emotional result to themselves. And this is why I'm saying it's a great ability to realize, to have access to what the fool would see in the moment and to what the opposite of the fool. That means those who become the fool quicker. That means, let's say you're in a, all those human beings who are going to be born in the future generations. Let's say you're born in a group or in a situation or a community or something, and everybody in that community is like, look at this fool. Yeah. You are blessed. Why? Why is the fool blessed? You know, why has it said that the honest fool goes into paradise first compared to the dishonest intellectual? Because the fool has allowed himself to see the raw edge of the system. This was kind of the advantage of back in the day, let's say in the time of medieval kings, being born in royalty and in some sense being born in, let's say, a peasant class. The person born in the peasant class, if they were blessed, they would experience the intensity of the edge of the system. So they would see like how like, let's say you're a stand-up comedian, okay, and I mean, I'm not a stand-up comedian. I don't know. I don't have. I can't speak for the experience. But what I have seen, I saw a documentary on it recently, and it's as if the stand-up comedian that can go. Imagine stand-up comics stop chasing. They stop using the term. Oh man, that person killed it. You know, that comedian killed it. You know, that means everybody laughed. Instead of wanting the best, imagine there came a comedian and this comedian actually wanted to get booed. This comedian wanted to have the pressure of the oven raise, right? To see what the lowest point in the system is. That means if you get over your failure quickly, you are smart. If you dwell on it, your future self is like, why the delay? So failure gives you one edge to the extreme of the system. That child being born as I don't know, let's say a prince or a princess or something, that psychology would be a psychology where they are experiencing the extreme of the cultural program. right? That means it's like we're all living in a system of meaning, and our behavior has a sort of value to the system and to ourselves. Now, some of those people who enter the system or are more earlier in the system, or who actually cared for the system and innovated something and went to a higher cultural, I don't know, I'm thinking like all these billionaires that are trying to be like personality gurus online. I'm just saying that whoever you are, wherever you are, the realistic approach is to see that you are you are somewhere on a hierarchy and a spectrum. That means on a sort of, there's a value, and it's like, I don't know, let's say you're a person who you've had multiple rooms laugh at you. You would feel untouchable if you get through it. If you get through whatever suffering that happens, that adds dimensions and character. Now anyways, back to the universe. I personally use, you can say this is Mr.Within's a model on evolution. So I speak about evolution through a lens that I feel like it's unique to how I've opened it. But anyways, the idea is I see it through these acronyms: UC, UW, UC, C. Oh, sorry, excuse me. UW, US, CS, CW. There we go. The 4 phases of evolution, and right now we are in the 3rd phase. And I'll explain this very quickly. First thing I'm considering is that there was just a world here, there was no creature. This means there was no free will. So technically, if we consider free will dependent on the emergence of a creature to be able to display that free will, when the creature wasn't around, there was no free will. So free will is something that was created, and that means it's an illusion, but it's a simulation. It's a simulation that had a starting point, but it hasn't ended if you're still alive and hear me. So the unconscious world is pretty much the planet just chilling, and then a body of a creature emerged, but not the consciousness of a creature, right? I consider this the objective evolution. That means this is when physically we became separate, and there was legs and hands and a creature, right? Or you can say it was the moment where, if you were an evolutionary biologist, you'd fathom it in the way where, if, excuse me, you would see it as the first time where the eyes began emerging underwater. That means our biological eyes, they evolved underwater, right? So that means the first moment of sight, that is itself like a separation. But now I'll get to consciousness. There is no consciousness at this point. To a point where, guys, I was fathoming something that maybe the scientific community has overlooked. Consciousness is a certain temperature's quality. That means there's something to do with temperature. Not just in the outer realms, just the possibility of emergence of attention. That means, think of it this way: the universe cooled down from the Big Bang. Now imagine something in another dimension we can't see cooled down, and that became the psyche. But it's interdimensional, so it's like how René Descartes says the mind and body are not connected. The brain is the body, but I'm saying the mind is like a different room than the body. That's how René Descartes saw it. Mind-body dualism. So anyways, from the objective evolution, that means the world was here first, there was nothing there. Then a creature, like look at your hands, look at your geometry, biological geometry and symmetry. Look at like how much of a clue is the symmetry of the human body. Just look at your human body right now, wherever you are. Look at your hands. It's symmetrical. Isn't it weird that creatures are symmetrical? That's super weird to me. Do you know what in nature suggests symmetry? What says that there has to be symmetry? So that's the mystery of the objective evolution. Now, what happened after we were just an unconscious, so first there was an unconscious world, then we became an unconscious self, the body. Now, let's say this body endlessly moved around without any story, context, purpose. Then it became aware of itself. In the same way, Jacques Lacan, this French psychologist, he says that it's similar to when a child looks at themselves in a mirror, and that's when the child attains their individuality. They notice who's looking, who's in the mirror is not somebody else, it is them. That's self-consciousness. Okay, so what that means is, in some sense, an object became aware of itself. The unconscious self became conscious of itself in the unconscious, so it became a conscious self. Now, this is a word I use, a term where the educational system doesn't teach this, but I call it the subjective evolution. This is where the mind's life began. Now, this is where we are. The moment we became aware we're an object, that's where we could become a subject. And when we became a subject, the whole naming thing began, where it was as if you could say the earliest human beings, the moment they found out that you can wield and you can link, you can link a subject to an object. Right? It was as if, like in the Oprah Winfrey show, where she was in one episode giving a car, and she's like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. It was as if, like, early human beings, the moment they found that they were a subject moving in an object, they're like, okay, this object gets a subject, this other, that becomes a tree, that becomes a cup, that becomes a this, that becomes a that, that's the sun, that's the earth, You see, it's just became literally like programming. The mind began typing symbolism over the outer realms, as if the inner film began engaging the outer film more and more consciously, in the sense that as if there's a sort of diamond consciousness emerging in the future. I don't know how technological it would be, but so now we are in the third phase of evolution, where we've become a subject that's an object. Now, this subject that's being an object is asking, where are all the objects in observable domain? Where is the universe right now? And the first thing, this is where the honesty comes in of creaturehood. The creature realizes it connected the subject. Reality is a subject. But this doesn't mean atoms are not real. This doesn't mean when we touch something it's not physical. It just means who is touching it is non-physical. So we are an unknown witness. The unknown. We are an unknown, poetically, an unknown mind moving a known body. When will this honesty arise in society? This doesn't mean that it's like, see, this is the error the New Age community made, right? I'm going to tell you, like, errors in all human beings trying to find the truth of truths, The error of the New Age community was that it allowed the inner realms to fill the knowledge of the outer realms. Let me say it differently. This is the error. the air is the bark of dogma being so loud, freezing the person in the place of that ideology. Let me see if there's a better way I can explain this. Imagine we have a circle, we draw a circle, and we call this the self. We draw another circle around this, we call this the others, or the other self. Okay, how we notice not just how we are being a self, how we notice others are being a self. And then there's another circle going around that. This is how we are noticing the world as being a self. And up to this point is the edge of the universe, which is the known. Then imagine a greater circle, and this is how the unknown is being the self. That means it's like a dartboard where the center of the dartboard is realizing the outside of the dartboard is the same. So it could be we are inside a multidimensional donut. Please tell me this isn't on mute. Okay, it isn't. So I'm saying, if you go within, you realize how you're being before you do things. If you go without, if you look for meaning and truth outside, there has to be a condition of doing things for something to be, right? It's as if that's why we have the whole concept of the person has to earn their living. But listen, look at that quote. It's not living in the sense of money. You gotta earn your life force. That animate mover. Right? And this was the biggest clue, because it's too easy to do nothing and not being grateful for the privilege. Right? So if there are some people, if you are still a temporary being to yourself, you want to just go into an eternal moment and never come out. It's as if it's a jacuzzi, it's a sauna, and non-duality can be a sauna you never want to leave. Right? Language enslavement is out of control. What I'm trying to say is, in front of our eyes, we are matter in space. Behind our eyes, we are the space where matter is moving. So that's a healthy way of seeing it. In front of our eyes, when we wonder about the edge of the universe, we find a question mark. When we wonder about the center of the universe, which is the same thing as the edge of the universe, it's like the center is one of the edges. You know? Especially if you see a two-dimensional map as suddenly becoming three-dimensional. Like a cone, for example. So the edge and the center are both edges. Our brain is literally translating movement as a movement. The brain has turned on the engine of characterhood. The mystery of the world needs to return. if we are 8 billion explorers, the 8 billion unique angles of the human dimension, that means I don't care who you are, the value of your eyes to society is that based on your conditioning and your genetics and how you have walked in this earth and your free will's programming, how your free will has programmed how you've interpreted everything, every program that has given you meaning. 8 billion explorers means 8 billion human beings that have noticed that integration is key. That means it's as if 360 degrees is like the advanced civilization. Right now we're all different degrees, yet we have not connected together, right? So once this the 8 billion once 8 billion human beings do a 360, whether on a skateboard or it's just, if we realize, if we care about the survival of the species more than the survival of the temporary individual that we are, doesn't mean it's the best approach. It means we will care to build, it's as if we're trying to build an advanced civilization so we can endlessly be comfortable individuals. And guys, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel. Let me see if the Diamond Sutra was mentioned. Let me see if I can find some quotes from there. Because when it comes to non-duality, that's really Buddhist wisdom. One of the most important things that Buddhism teaches is that objects are empty. You are the one who imbues it with life. Just like a young kid sees a teddy bear and sees it as a friend, plays with toys. Literally, children playing with toys, they're playing with imaginary friends, right? And then the child comes and says to the parent, you know, I see an imaginary friend. And the parent's like, oh, look at this kid who has no clue how solidified, you know, his psychology is going to become in a couple of years. So the Diamond Sutra is a Mahayana Buddhist sutra from the Prajna Paramita Sutras of Perfection of Wisdom genre. There's literally a website called diamondsutra.com. You know, the Diamond Sutra has made it to the cyberspace realms, you know. There we go, Diamond Sutra. Chapter 1. Actually, chapter 17. Let's see what's going on there. Okay. Diamond Sutra, chapter 17. At that time, the Venerable Subhuti then asked the Buddha, World-Honored One, may I ask you a question again? If sons or daughters of a good family want to develop the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind, if they wish to attain the highest perfect wisdom, what should they do to help quiet their drifting minds and master their thinking? This is in the Diamond Sutra, chapter 17. The Buddha replies, Subhuti, a good son or daughter who wants to give rise to the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind must create this resolved attitude of mind. In quotations, I must help to lead all beings to the shore of awakening, but after these beings have become liberated, in truth I know that not even a single being has been liberated. Why is this so? If a disciple cherishes the idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a universal self, then that person is not an authentic disciple. Why? Because in fact there is no independently existing object of mind called the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind. That means the Buddha is saying, I'll just keep reading it. What do you think, Subhuti? In ancient times when the Buddha was living with Dipankara Buddha, did he attain anything called the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind? Subhuti responds, no, most honored one. According to what I understand from the teachings of the Buddha, there is no attaining of anything called the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind. The Buddha said, you are correct, Subhuti. In fact, there does not exist anything so called highest mind, called highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind that the Buddha attains. Because if there had been any such thing, Dipankara Buddha would not have predicted of me, in quotations, in the future you will come to be a Buddha known as the most honored one. This prediction was made because there is in fact nothing to be attained. Someone would be mistaken to say that the Buddha has attained the highest, most fulfilled and awakened mind, because there is no such thing as a highest, most fulfilled or awakened mind to be attained. Subhuti, a comparison can be made with the idea of a large human body. What would you understand me to mean if I spoke of a large human body? Subhuti says, I would understand that the Lord Buddha was speaking of a large human body, not as an arbitrary conception of its being, but as a series of words only. I would understand that the words carried merely an imaginary meaning. When the Buddha speaks of a large human body, he uses the words only as words. That means for all those people who are worshipping ideological systems, learn to treat words as just words. The divinity is within, not in the words. Subhuti, so Buddha responds, Subhuti, it is just the same when a disciple speaks of liberating numberless sentient beings. If they have in mind any arbitrary conception of sentient beings or of definite numbers, then they are unworthy of being called a disciple. Subhuti, my teachings reveal that even such a thing as is called a disciple is non-existent. Furthermore, there is really nothing for a disciple to liberate. Yeah, who are we kidding? It's like consciousness is unknown. You know, we declare ourselves as a known sufferer, then want to find a unique knowledge to release that suffering. Anyways, Buddha continues, a true disciple knows that there is no such thing as a self, a person, a living being, or a universal self. A true disciple knows that all things are devoid of selfhood, devoid of any separate individuality. To make this teaching even more emphatic, the Lord Buddha continued. If a disciple were to speak as follows, in quotations, I have to create a serene and beautiful Buddha field, that person is not yet truly a disciple. Why? What the Buddha calls, in quotations, serene and beautiful Buddha field is not in fact a serene and beautiful Buddha field. And that is why it is called a serene and beautiful Buddha field. Subhuti, only a disciple who is wholly, W-H-O-L-L-Y, devoid of any conception of separate selfhood, is worthy of being called a disciple. You know what that means? That's saying, like, disciples don't exist. Learn to be nature and play your part here. That's it. For me, it's like, it was so shocking that I realized all human beings in my inner realms and all my beginning of my life till now, I would say, it was like, the realization echoed from the moment I had it, that it was like, they are all creatures. We are all just creatures implementing effort. That is why language is designed to be used playfully. Do you know? That means if we are all explorers of the unknown, there is no mistakes. There is just what is your finding. Report back to the species. You know? I have come to notice that the birds know the ultimate truth. And I'm not saying just the birds. Excuse me. Can you imagine if birds only knew the truth? People would start worshipping birds, and aliens would come down to Earth. It's like, why are people running around? And they're like, they're following birds for some reason. Why? It's like they have considered birds to be the divine ambassador of like the divine pattern of the earth. I'm trying to say that your inner realms, liberty is a choice. In the outer realms, liberty needs to be designed collectively. It's a distraction that there are people and that there is something controlling them. It should be seen that people are controlling their realm, right? And the system has been built in such a way where, I mean, if I get into capitalism, that's a completely, that's like that, that'll be a huge drift away. Where is the universe? If a mind was asking, it is where the mind is starting. So technically, for a mind, where it is the center of its universe. Because that's like, it's like a candle. It's like a candle in a dark room where the glow of the candle, however far it's reaching, is suggesting its reality. It's the way it centralizes in somewhere at least. So by the way, guys, I actually need a quick breather. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay. Thanks for hanging in there. I'm gonna continue. A thought occurred to me in the intermission that when we don't know when we don't know what a subject is, when we don't know what a subject is, how can a subject suffer? But it was different. What was the wording? How can a subject suffer if it doesn't know what the subject is? That means like an object, yes, its suffering equates to pain and non-existence. Okay, but when we ask ourselves, a subject, how can a subject feel pain? Can a subject suffer? Can a subject escape? Can a subject be in a simulation? You know, I think these are important. And by the way, just a note, thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts in the chat section. You can treat it as a sort of wall where you can write anything on, you know. So anyways, where was I going with this? Yeah, a subject can't suffer. And so the biggest question before we ask where is the universe, right? We have to ask, what is the universe? And if the universe is an object, then what is the outcome of that? And if the universe is a subject, like if right now we are a dream of a higher dimensional organism, people can fathom aliens. Now imagine fathoming such an advanced alien that it's as if its dreams are us. You know, or imagine your own thoughts, for example, your own thoughts suddenly becoming conscious that you are creating them, you know? You know what that means? It's like a person remembering a memory, then the version of them in that memory turning around and seeing who they are now, as if the memory is still alive. As if it's still in the psychology, has the same potential of life. Its livelihood didn't go away just because, you know. So the question is, what is the universe? Is it an object? Is it a subject? And it's not, these things they come together. That means it's either a subject causing a subjective cause and an objective effect, or an objective cause and a subjective effect. The subjective effect would make life an illusion. The subjective cause makes an unknown inspiration the source. What else can it be? That means we're saying either we're moving the world, either the world is moving us, or something unknown is moving everything. You know, like how else can we say it? So if we want to see it in a scope of movement. And you know, it's like this hilarious realization where it's like the neurologist, or let's say the grandson of a neurologist, was like, no way. The grandson of a neurologist was like, so my neural activity is generating the world to me, even though the world is needed for my neural activity to be here. That means the brain needs the world to move in, to be something in. Ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised, it's just movement. all our interpretations of reality, imagination, this and that, they're just movements, and because we can't fathom the vastness of the context, we limit it down and we lock down into a certain dimension of behavior or belief. And I'm telling you, the biggest question, this is why I'm saying it's the rise of it's the era of the philosophers. It's like there's going to be a revolution in what it means to be a philosopher, as if the philosopher now has as much of a moral obligation and responsibility, you know, because we have to see new dimensions, to be able, new angles, to be able to fathom something, you know, different than how it was. Really, it's kind of like Einstein says, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. That means if there is advancement required, there requires to be new eyes. So when I'm sitting here, let's say, in these talks talking about an advanced civilization, I am talking about a future that these eyes that I have now will not see. But there will be, you know, there is attention still. Attention is not just bound to sight. Attention, when it notices, it's being present in an instant, as if all the yogis, they ask them how long does it take to get enlightened, you know, it's like half of an instant, man, you know, and so it becomes something where if it's instantaneous, and instantaneous recognition can release subjective imprisonment of how an object needs to behave. That means it's like this question of what is the universe? Is it an object or subject? It is as important as the question, does freedom come from the inside or outside? That means, let's say somebody in their outer realms, they have incredible freedom, but in their inner realms, they don't feel free. Or imagine in your inner realms, you feel incredibly free, in your outer realms, you don't have that freedom, right? So where does the freedom come from? And I feel ultimately, it has to come from where energy is. That means it's as if, like, when I look at the moment as a biological human being on this planet, I'm like, okay, what do I have control over? Right? I don't have control over a lot of things. The body is biologically just happening. You know, I can control what I input into it, the input and the output, but when it comes to what it is, it's just something that's being there. A lot of life is just automated. You know, and it's like in the middle of this unconscious automation, we have become conscious, and we took it from the automated into like an analog approach. Right now, from the analog, we're technologically going back to the automation, right? So so what, like, robots taking our jobs is going to feel like? It's going to feel exactly like a forest where nature is just doing the work, not the human mind. And this passage I read for you from the Diamond Sutra, its incredible insight was that there is no highest, kind of like a sphere in the middle of nowhere, and somebody saying, where is up and down? You know, or this example that Alan Watts shared, where it's as if two spheres spinning around each other in empty space in a vacuum. Which one is spinning around which? And even the question comes, before us declaring the universe has no center or edge, we have to say, can we even see the center or edge if it had? Right? So I'm telling you, it's like in the inner realms, a person can be instantaneously free. In the outer realms, it's a journey. And it took me a while for that to settle. That the meaning in life is not just in how a person feels in one moment, right? As if the person lives a day and they're like, yeah, I had a couple moments throughout the day where they were like good moments. It's not just, you know, in the moment, it's really like the work. As if you ask, why should you have energy as a being right now? To do something with it, you know? The first thing that comes to a mind originating out of nowhere. there are no good and bad people. For me, it's just expression, different types of expression. Just like this show called, this Japanese narrative called Black Clover, FP characters have different types of magic. For me, different DNAs have different types of expressions, and there is really, the person can compare. You can always compare anyone to anyone else and totally get a new value of them. So it's like the comparison, I don't know, it's like a lot of knowledge is like we're saying, because this is like this, that is like that, you know? And this linearity is gonna crumble. The future, it's like we have to find some approach where behind our eyes, we are a multidimensional freedom to fathom many probabilities, then consciously choose. And in the outer realms, we are our choice. Like right now, when I'm speaking, I'm conscious. I'm conscious that it's like with the idea, the image I see in my inner realms and how it translates, and how the moment I say it in the outer realms, it is to me at least another level of its reality. It's kind of like an inventor. First, something is real in the inner realms, okay, then you bring it out on paper in the outer realms, then you actually build it in 3 dimensions, right? So literally, Edison saw a light bulb in his inner realms. A 3-dimensional light bulb. If we bring in multidimensionality, there is 2 types of multidimensionality I've spoken about. One is a cake, where the cake is cut up into pieces and the pieces have a relationship with one another, but they're ultimately one cake. And then there's a multidimensionality where there is an apple cake, an orange cake, a lemon cake, whatever, you see? Right, so these are 2 different types of multidimensionality. One that has to do with the inner realms, where you could say those people who have a fragmented psyche, because they have one biological body, if their attention comes to the biological body, their fragmented psyche becomes singular. Right, this is why it's as if, for example, you saw it, I remember Simpsons, there was a hilarious episode where Homer is in like the hospital, and he thinks of like some donut or something, and then he's going to grab the donut. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but he goes out to grab the donut. Then he realizes he's out of his body as a ghost, and he quickly flies back into his body. You know what I mean? Like some hilarious thing like that, right? So that would be as if that's why it's like constantly there's an effort, even in, you see religious exorcisms, right? Like the ideology they had was to constantly bring it to the truth of the moment. It's as if you shout what's here, and so the attention of the entity comes to here, you know, something in that sense. So if there's 2 types of multidimensionality, an inner and outer, we have to, this is a really hard decision to say, let's say we say there's a possibility, like somehow we found that we were in a multiverse, that there were other simultaneous universes, like there were different piano keys of universes, right? And these universes were all being played somehow into some next level melody. So imagine we are in one universe, one note, on this multidimensional piano, And so it's like the discrimination, is the world multidimensional because how we are allowing it to be in our inner realms, or is it actually multiversal? Right? And I've had this idea where I'm like, what if in another parallel universe all the other planets are inhabited by civilizations except Earth? A yin-yang multiversal possibility. It's like, what can energy desire from itself, form to form, on an Aeonian journey? So the multidimensionality of the outer realms, for example, I mean, in mathematics, it's super multidimensional. Mathematics has an incredible multidimensional analysis of the outer realms. Like, we even need numbers to notice their different dimensions. So pretty much the question is, is an object a subject, or is a subject an object? And I'm saying anybody who attempts to answer these two questions, I would say these are universal questions. History will honor your efforts. These two questions, is an object a subject, or we can make them one giant question, is an object a subject, or a subject an object? If a subject is an object, there is no rules. Truth is way more mysterious than we could have ever fathomed and conceived, and the limits of our language are like the limits of our world, as Ludwig Wittgenstein says. But if an object is being a subject, it's limited. But if it's a subject being an object, it's pure mystery. It's as if, how brave are we as attributeless multidimensional points of present attention to actually journey, right? Carl Jung, like, bless him, I'm so happy he was alive. You know, he existed in our history, right? He created at least some sort of backup system for us to be like, okay, regardless of the any sort of abstract, arbitrary image we give to the metaphysical or whatever, Carl Jung was just kind of like, okay, I don't care if you call it metaphysical, spiritual, whatever, but you are a conscious, you have a conscious sphere of awareness, and then this consciousness is kept by the unconscious. So whether spiritual, non-spiritual, whatever language the person wears, you can't avoid how the unknown holds potentially variables that can completely realign how you look at the world. That means only you can be a philosopher if you really care for what the universe is more than how you care the universe is to you. Because it's like a war over a coin flip worldview. It seems how attention moves suggests our life. You know, for me, it's I think for most people, maybe it's a easy view, balance. But for me, the concept of balance is one of the most chaotic ideas. That what does it mean, equilibrium, especially if it's multidimensional? That means, imagine you had a system that it's just like the body, you know, it's like so many different organs doing so many different things, yet their perfection is in their co-expression. If language is not the owner of sight, it's you can say an archaic revival of the unknown, if I was to use the scholar Terence McKenna's words. When the unknown truly appears, this is where ability is bound to definition. That means it's as if we were treating the universe like a book where there was a truth in it, you know, written before, right? And then the person is realizing, oh, because the truth in the universe, when they come to read this book, they're actually reading a notebook. Do you know what I mean? That means the person, it's like as if the world is a book, our self is a notebook. Yeah. We can create anew. The eyes and the attention can be piloted differently. If you want to pilot in your inner realms, you just have to find contentment with the outer realms. If you want to truly experience your inner realms, your outer realms, whatever kind of life you're living in an instant, you should be able to have contentment. Contentment doesn't mean everything is perfect. It just means you have accepted the circumstance and you're like, okay, this is the outer realms, right? Then the outer realms are, the moment they're content, their attention doesn't necessarily doesn't get pulled outside. So when your body is still and silent, you notice how your mind moves more. This is called meditation. Meditation is not, the point is not to not have thoughts. Ultimately, you come to a point where you are selfless, so there is no individualism to have a thought, because it's one event, the actuality of nature. You know, it's honestly like the reverse algorithm of self being more important than world. I think it's like saying, do most people communicate to actually share something, or do most people communicate to feel something? I think because most people communicate to feel something, they in some sense judge. So there is a lack of awareness to the inner realms. Excuse me. I'm gonna read something I've written here and probably end off the talk. But I've written, we don't need a reason to be happy, but if we identify with something that wants to continue in the future, we need to do something. We need to be something then. So you see, like, if we stop being humans, there's no reason for living. Now, if we stay as human, we are saying the reason is to be happy right now, but when we go to happiness, we realize true happiness is unconditional. A happiness that it's not just only certain circumstances have to be right for the happiness to be there, right? So that means it's as if the person noticing the unconditional nature of being and then being able to come back to the conditional dimensions of the nature of being, right? Because to be a human, you got to look through human eyes. That means there could be a person right now listening to my talk and they may not feel human. They may not feel like they're a person. They may have the body of a person, the ideology of a person, but they may not feel like a person. Like, for example, in Advaita and non-duality, like in Vedic culture back in the day, everybody walked around in town and everybody cared for each other. Why? Because they were like, we're all one God right now. You know, we're all God. You know, so you know, it's as if they were not being humans to themselves. They were being something. They were being itself. So the universe is a term for a human being, for the human mind. The universe is in our eyes are in the universe. Without our eyes, we couldn't even see a universe to try to conceptualize a meaning in it. And without the universe, there would be nothing to see. So intelligence cannot be the explanation of one dimension of view. That means it's like now we're at a point where when systems are not finite, we judge them. They're like, oh my God, are you talking about something infinite? Get out of here, man. It's a finite. You gotta talk about finite systems. But if imagine in the future, they're like, oh my God, you're thinking in a finite system. You know how it's like how, you know, old school, you know. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful, and keep in mind this is a philosophical podcast for accuracy on certain scientific ideas discussed. I don't know, open your local encyclopedia or use Google, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is that the world going back to mystery is not per se a bad thing. It's just rendering everybody as an explorer, and so the self-discrimination based on what the past was saying is how the future should be goes away, and so from a new present, the future walks into possibility. So we have to invent the most advanced human idea in the inner realms, and the most advanced view, advanced state of the seer within, and the most advanced state in the outer realms, and it's a suggestion. That means I feel like is it a threshold? Because right now our minds are way ahead of our bodies. But if the mind, maybe I'm thinking, why isn't the body catching up? And I'm like, it can't be just us waiting for a technological compensation for everything. That it's like our mind is going so fast, like the technology has to accompany our body to move that fast. Like, so I feel the mind may go and reach a certain peak, then it's going to have ultimate stability. So I feel it's as if our minds are climbing a mountain. The moment they get at the top, they will attain a certainty that instantly the body will come to the mountain, you know, climb the mountain. So anyways, wonder about the world you're in only once. It's a privilege of the lifetime. Namaste.